The last lesson is a short story by Alphonse Daudet that was published in the 1873 collection titled Monday Tales. This 19th-century realist fiction is written in the naturalism tradition. The story is set in a small village in the Alsace-Lorraine region of France at the time of the Franco-Prussian War of 1870 and is from the perspective of a first-person limited point of view of Franz, a French schoolboy. Don't forget to comment and subscribe. Before we summarize the story, it's important to understand its historical context. Napoleon III, the nephew of Napoleon I, ruled the Second French Empire. It was a time of economic and cultural growth for France, even though Napoleon III's rule was dictatorial. However, the empire ended after France's defeat in the Franco-Prussian War of 1870–71. The war began when France, aiming to maintain dominance in Europe, opposed Prussia's plan to unify the independent German states. Prussia was then made of Germany, Poland, and parts of Austria. Under the leadership of the Prussian Chancellor Otto von Bismarck, Prussia was well prepared and quickly defeated France, capturing Napoleon III and annexing the northeastern French regions of Alsace and Lorraine. The loss devastated France and brought the Second Empire to an end. It also led to the unification of Germany under Prussian leadership. The war resulted in massive casualties. Tens of thousands of soldiers and civilians died, including many from smallpox disease. This defeat left a deep mark on France, and recovering Alsace-Lorraine became a key motivation in later conflicts, including World War I. Alphonse Daudet, the author of The Last Lesson, was personally affected by this war. He joined the French army to fight against the Prussians, and his experiences shaped the story's themes of loss and the importance of cultural identity. The story begins with Franz running late for school and being nervous because he doesn't know participles, the topic for the day's quiz. He considers skipping school to enjoy the warm weather, chirping birds, and the sight of Prussian soldiers drilling nearby but decides to go anyway. On his way, he passes a bulletin board at the town hall, where bad news about the war has been posted for 2 years. Franz wonders what new problem has been announced but doesn't stop to look. Wachter, a blacksmith, calls out that Franz shouldn't rush, but Franz thinks he's being mocked. When Franz finally reaches the school, it's unusually quiet, like a Sunday morning. He notices the stillness instead of the usual noise of desks and lessons. Peeking inside, he sees his classmates seated, and his teacher, Monsieur Hamel, walking with his iron ruler. Nervously, Franz walks in, expecting scolding, but Hamel gently tells him to take his seat. Once settled, Franz notices Hamel is dressed in formal clothes he wears only on special occasions, like prize-giving days. The mood in the classroom is heavy, and Franz sees villagers, including the old mayor and former postmaster, sitting quietly on the back benches with sad expressions. Hamel then makes a surprising announcement. This is their last French lesson. An order from Berlin has mandated that only German will be taught in schools in Alsace and Lorraine. The new teacher will arrive the next day, and Hamel asks the students to pay close attention to this final lesson. Hamel's words shock Franz, like a great thunderclap. He realizes the bulletin board must have been announcing this news. Franz feels a deep regret, thinking about how little French he knows and how he wasted time playing by the Saar River or looking for bird eggs instead of studying. The books he once found annoying suddenly feel precious, like old friends. Franz even forgets Hamel's strictness and feels sad that the teacher is leaving. He also understands why Hamel dressed formally. It's to honor his last day. The villagers' presence makes sense too. They regret not attending school themselves and want to show respect for Hamel and their lost French identity. As Franz considers, his turn to recite comes. He wishes he could finally get it right, but he stumbles immediately and feels embarrassed. Hamel, however, doesn't scold him. Instead, Hamel points out how everyone in Alsace has contributed to neglecting education by always thinking there was more time to learn. He criticizes the region for delaying and letting its identity slip away. Even so, Hamel reassures Franz that it's not just his fault. His parents valued work over the school to earn more money, and even Hamel admits he hasn't always been strict, sometimes giving holidays to go fishing or sending Franz to water his plants instead of studying. Hamel tells the students that French is the most beautiful and rational language in the world. He urges them to cherish it and never forget it, explaining that preserving their language is like holding onto a key to freedom even in times of oppression. Hamel then begins a grammar lesson, and Franz is surprised at how easily he understands it. He feels that Hamel is teaching with extraordinary patience, as if trying to give them all his knowledge before leaving. Afterwards, Hamel distributes slips of paper for the students to practice writing. Each one says, France, Alsace in elegant cursive, and Franz imagines them as little flags fluttering in the classroom. The students work quietly, the only sound being their pens scratching on paper. Franz notices Hamel sitting silently in his chair, taking in every detail of the room as if trying to remember it forever. After spending 40 years teaching here, watching the garden grow, and seeing the schoolroom change over time, Franz realizes how much Hamel must love this place. Franz also understands how painful it must be for Hamel to leave, especially hearing his sister upstairs packing their belongings to move away. Yet, Hamel continues teaching until the very end. After the writing lesson comes history, followed by the youngest students chanting vowels. At the back of the room, Hauser, an old villager, joins in by spelling words with the children. His trembling voice and tears move everyone, making them feel both like laughing and crying. When the church clock strikes 12, signaling the Angelus prayer, the sound of Prussian trumpets outside interrupts. Hamel stands, pale but dignified, and writes Vive la France on the blackboard in large letters. He then leans against the wall, signals the class to leave, and silently ends the lesson. Let's discuss The Last Lesson by Daudet. Set during the Franco-Prussian War, Daudet's The Last Lesson examines the cultural impact of war and occupation. Franz, a schoolboy in Alsace-Lorraine, learns that the Prussian forces occupying the region have ordered the end of French lessons in schools. Instead, German, the language of the invaders, will now be taught. The story highlights how language is deeply tied to cultural identity, serving as its expression. Franz begins the day uninterested in school, dreading a grammar quiz on participles for which he is unprepared. He finds his lessons boring and would rather be outdoors enjoying the pleasant weather. To Franz, learning French grammar seems like a tiresome chore. However, everything changes when he arrives at school and learns this will be his final lesson in French. Shocked and saddened, he realizes how much he values the language and regrets neglecting his studies. During the lesson, Franz fails to recite the participle rule, and his regret deepens. His teacher, M. Hamel, gently reminds the students that postponing their learning has only hurt them, making it easier for the Prussian occupiers to question their French identity. Hamel even admits his own shortcomings, such as occasionally prioritizing trivial matters over lessons. How is it? You pretend to be Frenchmen, and yet you can neither speak nor write your own language. Hamel passionately explains the beauty and clarity of the French language, urging everyone to cherish it. He stresses that as long as people hold on to their language, they can preserve their freedom and culture, even under oppression. We must guard it among us and never forget it, because when a people are enslaved, as long as they hold fast to their language, it is as if they had the key to their prison. By teaching the final grammar lesson with extraordinary patience and clarity, Hamel imparts linguistic knowledge and reinforces the students' understanding of their cultural heritage. In the last lesson, Franz initially dislikes school and avoids his responsibilities. He doesn't enjoy his lessons, fears his teacher, M. Hamel, and would rather explore the woods or play by the river than study. On the day the story takes place, Franz contemplates skipping school, especially since he hasn't prepared for a grammar quiz on participles. However, when he arrives at school, M. Hamel announces that the Prussian authorities, who have taken control of Alsace-Lorraine, have banned French lessons in schools. This will be Franz's last lesson in French, and the news devastates him. He suddenly realizes how much he has taken his education for granted. He regrets not studying more diligently, feeling unprepared and lacking a strong grasp of his own language. Even his old textbooks, once a source of frustration, now seem like cherished treasures. M. Hamel points out that neglecting education has been a widespread issue. Parents prioritized work over school, sending children to farms and mills instead of classes. The elders of the village, sitting quietly at the back of the classroom, regret not valuing education more when they had the chance. Franz realizes that this neglect has left them all vulnerable to the loss of their cultural identity under foreign rule. Through this lesson, Franz comes to understand that school is about more than learning grammar. It shapes cultural values and strengthens identity. He sees the power of education as a means of protecting his identity and culture, something he had previously overlooked in favor of immediate pleasures like play or work. The bulletin board outside the town hall symbolizes the tyranny of the Prussian occupiers in Alsace-Lorraine. For 2 years, it has been the source of bad news for the villagers, from military defeats to harsh commands. Once used to share community updates, it has become a tool for the Prussians to issue repressive orders. On the day of the story, villagers gather around the board to read a new notice. Franz doesn't realize until later that it was announcing the decree to stop teaching French in schools. The board highlights the control and authority of the Prussian occupiers, who are slowly taking away the villagers' freedoms. In contrast, the blackboard in the schoolroom represents resistance and hope. At the end of the story, Hamel uses it to inscribe Vive la France as a powerful symbol of patriotism and defiance, reminding the villagers of their identity and the value of their heritage. Do like and subscribe for more videos.